Biggest fear was that you probably needed to be some sort of graphic specialist. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to learn a whole new bunch of really serious tools and compete against a bunch of people who've been doing that for the last 20 years.
And did you experience it as very technical when you got started?
Exactly the opposite of highly technical. I decided to make a film using scenes from my career. Now, I've traveled all over the world, been to amazing places. So there's no physical way I can go and film these scenes with me with a regular camera going to some village in the middle of nowhere or something like that. And I was able to do a fantastic drone shot of the drone flying up to a Cessna, amazing shot over the jungle. Again, it would actually be quite hard to shoot that in real life as well, very dangerous. So it's whatever you want to do, you can do this now. I'm a producer-director, TV producer-director. I've worked in television and films for decades. I started in the camera department, worked my way up through the camera department to become a DP and cinematographer, working in drama and documentaries. And then with times changing, the business changing about 15 years ago when self-shooting came in, everyone started shooting their own material. They didn't need stocks, cameramen, camera operators. So I decided to become a director. So that led to the last 15 years of working my way up to directing things like Michael Portillo's Great American Railroad Journeys for BBC. I was series director on SAS Who Dares Wins, which is an amazing experience. And I've moved into some true crime drama directing, which has been fantastic, doing drama reconstructions and interviewing people for those films as well. So I've had a very varied career over the years, always changing, always trying to move with the times. So when AI started to come along about 2 years ago, I did see some of the first images that were put on socials. And like a lot of people, I thought, well, they're rubbish and just laughed them off, really. Just thought, well, it's just not good enough. However, 2 years later, I do get introduced to a little bit more AI work. And one of them was Killer Kings on Sky History's series, Killer Kings. And it had improved a lot. And it was used for drama reconstruction. I think I saw the episode where Henry VIII drama reconstruction was done using AI. And I thought, oh, that's what I do. I need to take this a little bit more seriously now. And I know exactly how that would have been shot. I've done those things, both as a cameraman and as a director. You know, you'd have got a Henry VIII look-alike for as cheap as you could get. You've gone to Angels and got a Henry VIII costume and some crowns and a few props, goblets and swords and a big throne. And you'd have hired somewhere that cheap as you could that looked like a castle interior. And then you just shoot all loads of stuff out of focus, walking, all that kind of stuff. And you probably do that all in a day and it'll be quite hectic, but good fun. And I've done lots of that stuff. So suddenly seeing AI doing what I was doing and it actually taking it to a slightly higher level visually, they were able to do stuff with some fight scenes and some horses and riding. I thought, this is time to get involved now.
Before getting deeper into AI and actually taking that leap, what was one of your biggest worries or like things that you were skeptical about regarding AI?
Well, I think until I started looking into it a bit more, I didn't really know anything about it. Was it going to take all our jobs? Was it going to change? Or just the same as everyone else in terms of that. But once I kind of looked a little bit more into it and realized this stuff was happening, I think my biggest fear was that you probably needed to be some sort of graphic specialist with real knowledge of deep Photoshop, of graphics programs like Blender and 3D graphics. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to learn a whole new bunch of really serious tools and compete against a bunch of people who've been doing that for the last 20 years.
And how has that been debunked? Did you experience it as very technical when you got started?
Exactly the opposite of highly technical. It was quite incredible, the wow factor of how easy it was to create images and videos straight away. You kind of think, oh, it's just like a camera. You know, this is great. I don't need to learn very much about this. I can just do it. But once that wow factor had gone through and you started to do something a little bit more precise about things, you realize there was a lot more going on there and there was a process to be learned. So that was the main thing then, was discovering there was a process to this.
That's very funny because there's a lot of people who think it's a press button exercise. It's like, oh, you just type something in a box and the whole thing came out and all these jobs are at stake. And obviously there is job displacement. Um, but what is interesting when you try asking people, like, how much control do you want over the image? Because it's in the creative control and the intent that probably a lot of the hard work and frustration will come in with getting the AI to do what you want. Is that how you experience it as well?
Absolutely. I mean, as a image professional, as a photography geek, as opposed to a tech geek and computer geek, you control every element of the image. That's your job. The lighting, the camera movement, the composition, what lens you use, what f-stop you use, how people move in the frame. That's all something that you have to control. And what it became quite quickly clear that that wasn't the case with AI. Something else was going on. And so you'd put in a very simple statement, I want this character to do that and say this. It wouldn't always do it. And it wouldn't do it in the way I thought. It would do weird things. Or you tried it again, it would do something different. And you tried it again, it would do something different. Try another generation, do something different. So there was something really weird going on here. And it was the next level was understanding how these tools work. I know how a camera works. I didn't know how AI tools worked. So understanding how they actually worked at a base level was the next step.
And what would you say is your biggest takeaway of learning how AI works versus a camera? Like, what is one of the things that there was really a moment when it kind of clicked for you of like, okay, this is how it's different.
Yeah, it's AI was a camera on location. I'd have thrown it in the bin after 5 minutes of using it because you never know what it was going to give you. Whereas a camera, it was like if you press record and every time your camera changed the settings that you'd set it, and you didn't know what settings it was shooting on until you watched it after the take, that's what AI can be like. But there is a way of controlling it, I learned. And that is from understanding how LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT and Claude work, and then how image and video models work as well. And it's understanding all that training data that they've got, that they've been given, is sort of how it stores and how you access that and help the model to understand where to get the elements that you need for your image or video or text. And, so if you were doing food photography, you'd start with food photography at the beginning of your prompt. So it goes to its food photography. And then it goes like a studio setup with directional lighting, and it looks that. And so you kind of guide it to where you want to go. So the big picture down smaller and smaller detail. And that helps it understand where you want to go. But I think the crucial thing is when you create a new image, it's not copying something. It's not cloning it. It's actually creating it from scratch every single time. And every single time it's going to be slightly different. So how these tools work from their kind of core DNA and how learning the language and the way of using regular language. We're not talking about coding here or anything special, not even really cinematography type terms. We're talking natural language, but in a way that these machines understand.
That's so true. And it reminds me of the term that we use very often, machine whispering. It's like, some people have this ability to make, when you talk about dog whisperers, they have this ability of making a dog do something, of understanding the dog on that deeper level. I feel like watching you guys and you work on your project, increasingly you become a machine whisperer. You become a person with the ability of understanding iteratively, like, this is where that went wrong. And like, okay, well, if the machine reacts like this, then maybe I should act like that.
These tools like Midjourney or Banana now or Runway or Sea Dance, you can look at them like they're different cameras. They have different ways of working. They produce different styles of images. And so you have to know the internal menus of each camera system that you use, or even going back to shooting film. Kodak had a different look to Fujifilm, it had a different look to Agfa film. And you understood that and used that in a creative way. And I think the same is true with different AI image and video tools and LLMs for producing text is that they're all designed and built by different teams and work in different ways. And you have to understand that and learn to work with what their unique things are that make them what they are.
So there's a lot of talk about AI, sometimes too much talk and too little action. And there's probably a lot of assumptions out there. What are assumptions that you hear people make quite commonly about AI in the media industries that you would want to question?
I think the biggest assumption from using these tools, both image and video, is that you give an AI a log line for a movie, you type that in and say, make me a movie. And a few minutes later, a 90-minute feature film is going to appear on your screen, and you can stick that on whatever. And, you know, you can start earning money from it. That is not happening. It could happen in the future, but once you understand what these tools can and can't do and how much control you need over them, you realize that producing a movie like that off a simple text, one sentence text log line, it's just inconceivable. It just doesn't work. You have to be in control of these machines. Yes, it can produce a very simple image from a very simple text. That's great. But a movie, a script, is an incredibly complex thing that has many, many elements that are all moving around at the same time and affect the overall outcome of that. And there are just far too many elements for an AI machine to cope with that and control it. One way of looking at it very simply is that when you come to make videos, or say on VO3 or Runway, you're limited to 10 seconds usually. Now, why 10 seconds? What, we shoot for hours on cameras now, sync sound. Why can VO3 only produce a 10-second sync sound kit? It's because after 10 seconds, these machines can't keep hold of all that information and control it. 10 seconds is the ideal time to produce something of a high enough quality before the machines start to go haywire. I think that's a good example of showing how limited AI is actually. Because obviously I can take a camera and shoot for hours, sync sound. I could do the whole movie in one take, but you can't do that with AI in the way we want to, at the level we want to.
Absolutely. And I guess that's one of the charms / curses of AI as well. And you've seen this, right, on the program as well. Like we were talking about a tool, and then a week later, as you said, VO3 kind of came out. It was like, oh, great, we can start rewriting everything. And how do you feel about the fast moving landscape? How do you feel about just the idea that tools change very frequently? And how do you feel about your ability to keep up with those changes as they occur?
Yeah, it's exciting, but also difficult. In my film days, when I grew up in film, Ariflex or Panavision would bring out a camera once every 5 to 10 years. Kodak would update their film stock once every 5 to 10 years. But once you got to know them, you just got on with your creative stuff. There wasn't that much to learn. Whereas now you've got video cameras coming out all the time. But now you've got these AI tools, and things are changing every couple of months. Somebody brings out a new tool and everyone says, oh, this is amazing. On socials, you say, oh, this is the amazing tool. It's a killer of the last tool that was amazing last week. Does a client want this new tool because they've heard everyone saying, oh, this tool's better than that tool. So I think there's a lot of confusion there as to, should you use this tool? Should you use that tool? Which one's better? I think a bit of time just working with the tools, playing with the tools is important, and understanding, are they better for what you need to do? I think it's really important to understand, what do you need to get from this tool for what your project is? You might find that this new tool is actually not really relevant for you. You're still good using another tool. It's kind of the Wild West. So yes, it's very exciting, but you've got to be trying these products out all the time.
And do you notice that they all have something in common, that there is a common thread, that once you understand how one tool works pretty well, that your learning of new tools increases?
I think going back to the basics of understanding how these tools all work in the same way. They all come from these large language models and huge databases. So understanding how to write your prompt in a certain way that the machine can understand them. And that comes from actually knowing what you want. You have to know what you want at the end of the day, which is just like filmmaking. When you go to shoot a scene, you, as a cinematographer, as a director, you know what you want that scene to look like. You know what the lighting's going to look like. You want to know what lenses you want to use, not only to get the whatever you want in the frame, but what the emotional communication of a particular lens is, whether it's a wide angle close to somebody for a close-up or a telephoto lens further away for a close-up. They're the same shot size, but emotionally they're quite different. I think you have to understand that about when you're using these machines. You have to know what you want so you can actually gauge then whether the machine is giving you what you want and find a way of getting that using the language that's correct for that machine.
That's also quite inspiring that in the end of the day, it's your internal knowledge of cinematography and the craftsmanship and the skills that went behind understanding what emotions require what shot and how that works. That is still pretty much the core and the basics of filmmaking. And then the layer on top of that is just like with cameras, which tool is appropriate? Should I maybe switch it out for that one? Sure, it may change. Sure, there may be some extra buttons. But in the end of the day, the basics stay the basics.
Absolutely. It's not about the technology. It's a form of communication, whether you're writing something with a pen and paper, using, a computer, using a still image, or communication. You're communicating something emotionally as well as action-wise. And I think ultimately that's what these tools are for. They're there to communicate a story, whether it's in a still image or in the video that, you've edited together. Obviously, you've got all these 10-second videos. You have to cut them together just like you would do on a timeline on any other program. In a way, AI filmmaking has its own DNA. It's not just a replacement for traditional filmmaking. It can be used with traditional filmmaking to enhance it, to speed things up if necessary, to get shots that you'd never get. But I think there's also another world out there that is purely an AI-made film, and it will have a certain look and it will have a certain pace. I think if you if you take Lawrence of Arabia, directed by David Lean, was shot on 65mm film. If David Lean and Freddie Young had shot that with a GoPro, it would look completely different. It'd be a completely different experience as well, because the DNA of a GoPro is a completely different thing. It's something you stick on your head or your chest and you run around with it. It's not like a 65mm film camera. It has to be on a huge tripod or crane. And I think the DNA of AI filmmaking has that same thing. It will produce a look and feel and films and stories all of its own, as well as being assisting regular filmmaking.
And you said one thing that's also very intriguing, specifically with your background as a DOP and someone who's good with cameras. What is one specific thing that you can do now in terms of getting shots that you just simply couldn't get before? What are those shots that you can now achieve with AI that just get you really excited?
It's kind of it's whatever you want to do, you can do this now. I had other shots where a birth scene where I was able to get the characters looking at each other in the correct eye lines out of frame, so it felt like they were in the same room, even though I couldn't generate a wide shot of the room. That was just a bit too much for me at the time. I think my skills now are a little bit more advanced, and I want to recreate this scene now a few months on, recreate my film a few months on with more experience and the newer tools, and see if we can reach that level that it really has those, as if it was shot by a camera in the normal way you shoot these scenes.
Chris, the two things that come out of what you just said for me. One, let's not forget that this was your first ever AI film. Like, you had not touched an image generator before this. Like, this was your very first actual artifact with AI that you made, I think, in like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe. Like, that was the timeline of, for the first time, touching an image generator and learning what an LLM is to producing this. And the second thing that jumps out for me out of what you said is the difficulty of continuity. These are the little things that we take for granted in traditional film and taking footage, because everything is continuous. It's the same theme, it's the same thing. But working with an AI where you recreate reality at every shot from scratch, getting the AI to be in that same moment is incredibly hard. So I suppose that, yeah, there's a lot of things being taken for granted in AI films where people think like, oh, that's not that impressive. But in fact, the things that would seem impressive in traditional film and TV, like James Bond explosions and like, I don't know, a unicorn coming out of the ocean and like, I don't know, transforming into something, and all of those things are relatively easy for some reason. But the hard thing is a tiny, like, very just continuity of a character. You want to throw your computer out the window sometimes.
Absolutely, you've got a very good point there, is that, yeah, making the big explosions and the big dramatic shots and the big worlds, those sci-fi worlds, is actually quite easy in AI. But making somebody's face look real and consistent over a number of shots that you've cut together is far harder. But I've seen images and both stills and video where I'm thinking, is that AI or is that real? And so it's there, but it's that consistency between shots that we spot very, very quickly if something's off.
Definitely. And so going forward, how do you see yourself using AI in your day-to-day as someone would experience as a director of photography and a director, and even just Chris in everyday to-day life? What are those use cases that you think you'll be using more often?
I mean, to use AI and to be getting good at it, however you're using it, if you're just using it in LLM, research on Chat GPT or Claude, or, you've downloaded something to your own computer, so you're not using extra resources by bouncing stuff around the world. You have to enjoy using it. You have to enjoy using these tools. And then you can use that enjoyment, you take that into work, just like any other thing you should be doing when you're working. So I could see these tools being used in drama reconstruction, like I have done for true crime and things like that. For B-roll, I think it's quite important for face swapping. That's quite good for people who want to remain anonymous in interviews, gives you another option there. But I also would like to create more totally AI films. I think it is worth really going and using LLMs to, and this is quite controversial, to create characters, to write scripts. I think people are doing really good work there and it's quite advanced. I did see something that occurs in Soho Cinema recently, non-player combat, made by a guy called Tom Patton, 40-minute episode of a series that he has created, very video game-like style, but again, all AI on a huge screen. It looked fantastic. So yeah, I would like to continue making full AI films. And I think it becomes that process of creating such a big thing. Do you need extra tools for just coping with that amount of data, all those shots? So that sort of automation of some of it, maybe using AI agents, which is another big thing that we're talking about. So I think there are lots of opportunities there.
Yeah. And so on that note, if a colleague comes to you and says like, hey, Chris, I see what you've been doing, and what do you think I should learn AI? And if they ask you that, what would you tell them? Who is learning AI perfect for at the moment, and who should probably wait?
I don't think anyone should wait. I think you should find out how AI is being used in your job, and that includes everyone outside film and TV, in other industries. Lots of people are talking about AI and how it can help them. But I think you should definitely investigate it. I don't think everyone needs to be great at making AI images or AI videos. I think if you understand how it's done and how it fits into a production workflow and what the benefits, but also the problems of AI, which would be leaving it all to the last minute for the editor or the online editor or the AP or somebody just to do in the last week of the edit. That's probably the worst thing you can do. It will be chaos. Edits are bad enough as they are at the end sometimes, but trying to do AI and just dumping it on somebody at the end is probably the worst thing you can do. So even understanding that would be really important.
Oh God.
I think understanding it, that those sort of things are probably, you're not that into it, understanding at least how it fits into the workflow is important.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about trying to fit in AI at the last minute It's probably going to be an absolute dumpster fire.
That's how TV programs are made. That most TV programs, it's they are bespoke, and literally some only just get made. You literally sometimes in the edit you've only got one shot of that important moment, and you've got to make everything work around that. And it's hard enough to get that going, let alone just and legal things, let alone just you're then adding AI, which is a slightly uncontrollable quantity. It's not like just making an extra graphic that will go in at the end with somebody's name and job title for an interview. It's much harder than that, and it's got to sit well with the rest of the material.
That makes total sense. What do you think is one thing that you'd want to leave with our viewers that you think that everyone should know about AI?
I think my takeaway from the whole process of learning AI, it's a tool. It's a tool that needs to be controlled by people, by creative people, to achieve something they want to make for their audience, which is just the same as regular filmmaking, and it's another tool. I think that's the most important thing, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. This has been delightful.
It's been a pleasure, Emily. Thank you.